Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the regular meeting of Fernie City Council held on March 25th, 2025. Kisukukit. We acknowledge the city of Fernie is located within Kukanamakas, the unceded territory of Yakutat Nucleate First Nation. We recognize that we live and work within their vast lands. Akanahunik are from Yakutat Nucleate and are members of the Tanaha-speaking peoples of British Columbia, Idaho, and Montana. I'll now call the meeting to order at 6:31 p.m. And I will ask for a mover and a seconder for the following recommendation: that the agenda be amended to include a late item under correspondence, a letter from Conseil Scolaire Francophone, School District 93, a request to fly the Francophone flag at City Hall, and that item 11.2, CHIF grant endorsements, be discussed on the agenda before item 11.1, CNL right-of-way recosting outcomes, and that the agenda of March 25th, 2025 regular council meeting as amended be adopted. Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Ramadas. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. I'll now ask for a mover and a seconder for the following recommendation: that the minutes of the March 11th, 2025 regular meeting of council be adopted. Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Audia Kelly. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. I'll now open the floor to public participation and invite public in attendance or participating electronically who wish to comment on items listed on the meeting agenda in accordance with section 3.7.3 of the procedure bylaw to address council, except speakers must not address council regarding a matter for which a public hearing must be held or has been held pursuant to the Local Government Act prior to council's consideration of the matter or adoption of the bylaw. Speakers must not address council regarding a permit for which public notice must be given or has been given pursuant to the Local Government Act prior to council's consideration of issuance of the permit, and a speaker may only address council for a maximum of 3 minutes. So I'll first look to our gallery and see if anybody would like to speak this evening. Welcome. If you can identify yourself at the podium.
Hi, my name is Louise Ferguson. I'm here on behalf of the Fernie District Arts Council to speak to 11.5. I just wanted to come and speak specifically, firstly, to the Wednesday social aspect of the report. I want to thank the staff for including it in the proposed strategy. I just wanted to reiterate our ask from the December meeting where I came, that we were looking for $15,000 in support for a 3-year agreement and the in-kind donation of the city permits and equipment rentals. I recognize that this is just a draft and that there is a bit of a process for it to be approved. So one of the things I would like to be considered is the in-kind considerations, that if there could be a decision on that today, just because of the timeline of when the socials are, just because that would definitely help us with our planning. So that was for the Wednesday socials. And then just in general, I'm definitely looking forward to learning more from the presentation from Mr. Logan on the RDS strategy going forwards. And just for the events and animation, the process for how that is done, whether there is a process for like applying for the money, the remaining money, or however it is decided. That again, for events and animation, it's good to have lead times. And so having deadlines for applying and enough time to spend the money so that it's spent well would be great. I also just wanted to share a few thoughts from Courtney Baker, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight. And she just wanted to mention that there hasn't been a lot of community engagement on this draft and would like to see more of it, and wondered how the list of the 5 core events have come into play. I think that there's been a lot of discussions over the years about core events, and it would be great to have that list, but how that has come to pass. And then she also mentioned about the Indigenous tourism. It's mentioned a lot, but there isn't any kind of reflection of that in the strategy. So yeah, the remaining funds in that events and animation, how it's going to be distributed if this is goes forwards, and basically looking forward to having more information on that.
Thank you, Ms. Ferguson. Would anyone else like to speak? You can approach the podium. And please identify yourself.
Chris Inglis was a resident of Fernie for 55 years, owner of Fernie Corn Sales. Mayor, council, staff, and gallery, I'm here tonight to just ask a few questions, I guess, more or less, and get informed. I brought up last week when I was traveling about the way the streets were plowed and to the side and how it affected especially the seniors and everything. And, you know, I give it 7 days and not a response from City Hall, the mayor, nobody. I think that's kind of ridiculous when somebody brings something to your attention, especially I brought it to your attention, Mayor, message, and I also sent a message to City Hall, but still no response or why it happened, or more or less, you know, using the public forums as an apology. We're sorry we did this. We didn't mean to impact the community like this, but you did. And Councillor Audio Kelly, Mayor Milligan, and the councillor that's missing, Mr. Shoesmith, missing today, they can appreciate back in the day, 20 years ago, what did we do when we got 6 to 8 inches of snow? We put it to the middle and it was left there and the rain would take it away and people couldn't jaywalk in that. But for some reason, you guys just affected so many people by plowing it to the side. I don't know if you got that figured out yet or not. And look at the snow budget. I don't know how many days it snowed, but you know what? It's nowhere near what you budgeted for. I guarantee it, because we don't get the snow we used to get. And to do it that way, like Councilor McIsaac brings up and Councilor Nixon, famous for this, let's raise the taxes, let's raise the taxes. There's no way to cut costs. Well, there is ways to cut costs, because how much did you spend on snow removal? Did you budget for, and how much did you spend? And then the other thing is, you know, I was down at the arena and I videotaped this and everything just so you could have proof. But there's snow being removed at the arena, and they got one loader there and one operator on the truck. So the return trip on that truck is 23 minutes. Do you know what the cost is for that loader and truck? One operator. You know what used to be done, and it was good practice, was the loader would be brought down to the arena, then the operator would be picked up, taken back to the yards, get one dump truck, and he would load himself and do the snow.
Point
That's
of
how
order,
you
Your
save.
Worship. What budget, what item on this is being discussed right now?
You like to interrupt there, Councilor McIsaac?
No,
Is that what you like
I
to
don't
do?
have to check with you. I
He
check
doesn't
with
have
the
to
chair.
check with you, Mr.
Well,
Inglis.
but he interrupted as he
He
usually
did.
does.
He did.
Yeah, he did, which is very,
The point of order, and it's a fair
unprofessional.
question, is what are you speaking to on this agenda?
I'm speaking to the budget. Because the operational isn't on the budget, on the final, you pass the budget tonight. So operations is on the budget. Any smart ass other questions do you have for me?
Please, no, that's,
Well, I'm just asking.
I won't have that behavior in here, Mr.
It's not
Inglis.
behavior. I'm just asking a question.
Your language isn't appropriate. in
Oh,
this-
okay.
in
I heard that
this
on the radio,
venue.
so I didn't think it was inappropriate. It's on the radio and TV. I didn't think it was inappropriate. I
Okay,
apologize.
thanks, Mr. English. You're done. Your time is up.
Actually, no, it's not. I'm not done. I'm got a timer going here. I'm 1:42. I have 3 minutes, don't I?
You have 36 seconds.
Okay. And then the other thing is, you know, city council, especially for the vote for the budget increase, because that's all they know how to do is raise taxes. You know, I don't think this council and staff members can be trusted with the projects that are coming up. I hope you consider maybe having somebody from the public, not myself, but somebody else from the public, when these tenders are open up for the sand yard build and maybe the fire hall, so we know it can be trusted. I don't really think anybody in this room can really be trusted that much to be there and be honest with the way the tenders are going to come. That's what I see from outside looking in. Thank you.
Ms. Rhodes, is there anybody online who's indicated a desire to speak? Okay. Thank you. Welcome, Ms. Gayorki. Do you have your video available?
I think so. Hang on. Yes, there we go. Hi. I did want to just do a public comment period if I could, although I'm not usually used to coming on as a panelist, so.
Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Mayor Milligan. Hi, my name is Yika Gayorki. I'm the Executive Officer for Tourism Fernie with our offices at 102 Commerce Road. I'm speaking in regards to item 11.5 with regards to the resort development strategy. I was not able to make it there physically tonight, but I wanted to say a few words and just be online for the presentation tonight. I just wanted to confirm that Tourism Fernie has been meeting with the Director of Parks, Facilities and Recreation once or twice a month, discussing this topic on a variety of occasions, and as detailed in the report that we have, generally informed its content. There is limited time for city staff with stakeholder input to get this initial draft done. So I do hope that the City Council does support the recommendation that Council endorse the Resort Development Strategy Project and direct staff to advance the development to present an initial draft to the Ministry by April 30th. That said, I wanted to just raise a couple of points and observations. We understand city finances are tight and that there has been an ongoing trend to use more RMI money to cover what taxpayer dollar has helped support or should help support. This has become a challenge for the RDS planning over the next 3 years, as there is less funds now available to support important tourism programs, events, and services. Items such as Grizz Days and winter grooming have always been joint investments between tourism and resident city tax dollars, as they benefit both. Now it looks like all the funds for these are going under the RMI, and RMI is limited, meaning other important items not acknowledged or understood yet could get cut completely. I ask that you endorse the recommendation and allow staff to continue to work with the key stakeholders to develop the right plan in the short timeline that the city has outlined. And thank you again for the support. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Gayorki.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? No. Thank you. With that, we'll move on to item 10.1, the adoption of the 5-year financial plan 2025 to 2029, bylaw number 2527, 2025. I'll ask our corporate officer to read the recommendation.
The staff recommendation is that council adopt the 5-year financial plan 2025 to 2029, bylaw number 2527, 2025.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Any discussion? All those in favor? Myself, Councillor McIsaac, Councillor Hamilton, and Councillor Nixon. And all those opposed? Councillor Ramirez and Councillor Rodney Kelly. With that, item 10.2, adoption of the delegation bylaw, number 2467, amendment number 2480, 2022. And if you could read the recommendation.
Certainly, Your Worship. The staff recommendation is that council adopt delegation bylaw number 2467, amendment bylaw number 2480, 2022.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor McIsaac. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. And now we will move on. We've rearranged the order of item 11.1 and 11.2. We'll move to 11.2, the CHIF grants endorsements report from Project Engineer Line. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We'll just pull it up. So my first presentation today. Oh, no, wrong one. Sorry. Pardon me, stealing Jenny's. Pardon me for that. My first presentation today. No, why is it? I'm so sorry. Third time's the charm. Okay. Today I'm going to talk about the Canadian Housing Infrastructure Fund grant in support of two applications and to discuss it for the other application that will be coming up later tonight for two different lift station projects in the city. We'd like endorsements from council to include in our applications to bolster our applications. Announced in the 2024 federal budget, the Canadian Housing Infrastructure Fund is a $6 billion fund that aims to accelerate new construction, rehabilitation, and expansion of drinking water, wastewater, stormwater, and solid waste infrastructure that directly supports the creation of new housing supply and improved densification. The fund will be delivered under two streams, $1 billion under the direct delivery stream and the remaining 5 under the provincial and territorial stream, which I wrote 6 up there, but that is a mistake. The direct delivery stream offers a 50-50 split on eligible project costs between the federal government and communities like us with under 30,000 people in them. Whereas the provincial and territory streams will offer increased funding of 50% federal contribution, 33% from the province, and 17% the remaining from the applicant. There are no limits to the number of applications that an applicant can submit. The city is eligible to apply under both streams, but we'd only be able to receive the funding from one. Even though the city's applications that I'll discuss next are more in alignment with the criteria of the provinces and territories stream, as our projects are more focused on supporting long-term infrastructure and housing needs. Fernie is a rural, which they say is under 30,000 people in the community applicant, and the province stream is focusing on those smaller communities. And it's a project that aims to preserve existing capacity or increase reliability of infrastructure. We are planning to apply to both streams to ensure we're not overlooking a possible funding opportunity. The direct delivery application closes at the end of March, and the province and territory stream isn't open yet. It's still going negotiations between the federal government and the provinces and territories. So if we are lucky enough to be awarded grants under both of those streams, we can choose to go with the province and territory stream for the most amount of money for the city. Now on to the projects that we are applying with or hoping to apply with. The first is the 10th Avenue lift station. It was constructed in 1975 on the edge of the 10th Avenue Park and services a 24-hectare area within the annex neighborhood. It's a metal building and it houses the wet well, the electrical equipment, and the pumping equipment. The mechanical and electrical components of the lift station have surpassed their planned lifespan of 25 years, as this lift station is about 50 years old. And the building itself in 2022 was struck by some snow clearing equipment, and it's now structurally unstable. So to limit anything happening to that building, we did install some temporary framing. You can see on that picture, it's the wood on the outside to limit further deterioration. However, at this point, the house is, the building is structurally unstable and the items inside are past their lifespan. In order to be prepared for potential grants like this one, in 2022, the city directed ISL Engineering to develop a detailed design for a full replacement of this station. And the application that we are planning to put in is being prepared to fund the construction of a replacement facility. The second application is for the Riverside Lift Station. This lift station was originally constructed in 1999 as part of the neighborhood development by the developer. This station pumps unscreened wastewater to the Fernie sewage treatment plant. This unscreened wastewater causes operational and maintenance issues at the lagoons. The remainder, this is the only unscreened influent that goes to the plant. The remainder of the city's wastewater travels through the main sewage pumping station, and that's been screening influent since 2019 before conveying it to the plant. In 2022, we began an assessment to install a screening unit here at Riverside so that all wastewater would be screened before it went to the sewage treatment plant. But that assessment determined there is two major issues with that plan. The station is on a really small lot, and there's no space upstream to place that screening unit that's on city property. And also, if we wanted to change the gravity sewers upstream of that lift station, there's actually very limited hydraulic capacity to do that. So our consultant on that project, ISL, came up with a few alternative solutions to address these issues. And they were, we could rebuild the lift station from scratch and install a new lift station with an integrated screen. We could build a new force main and pump this flow back up to the main sewage lift station, use that screen, and then pump it all back to the sewage lagoons. We could reroute, so this lift station is actually not on a road yet, so we could reroute the planned road development in Riverside to provide additional space in front of the station to install a screen, but we would have to purchase private lands to do that. We could add a screening unit at the sewage treatment plant. However, because we're already screening most of the flow at the main sewage lift station, that would be a very large screen for not a lot of actual screening required. We could continue as we are without screening and just do more maintenance at the lagoons, which is what we are doing because we don't have this screening unit. Or we could build a new lift station, but repurpose the existing building and wet well to add a screen in. So both the Riverside station and this main sewage lift station pump into the same one force main that goes to the lagoons. Presently, the Riverside pumps are unable to discharge into the force main during high rainfall events. They can't overcome the pressure from the main sewage lift station. It's just too strong. So during large rainstorms, both stations must be manually operated by our operators to make sure that each get a chance to discharge. The Riverside lift station also has access and ventilation issues, and that's just by the way it was originally constructed. With the lift station at 26 years old, the electrical and mechanical components are past their planned lifespans of 25 years by 1 year. Based on the challenges facing the Riverside lift station right now and the inability to place a screening unit with it, the city directed ISL to begin the design of a new lift station for Riverside, repurposing the old wet well to house the new screen. Reusing parts of the existing lift station is looking to save costs. The project is currently at preliminary design stage, and the CHIF application is going out to fund the detailed design stage, tentatively planned for 2027, and the replacement in 2028. The anticipated costs for both of these projects are on the screen. Depending on the grant, well, and if we win them, depending on if we win any of the grant, the city's contribution would be between 17% of the total cost and 50% of the total cost. And so I've broken them down there as, because 10th Ave lift station is already at detailed design stage, we're just looking for the construction costs. And then Riverside, it's broken down into design 1 year and construction the next year. The full cost and the requirement to replace these lift stations is already within the city's 20-year capital plan. But the grant would obviously greatly limit the impact on our community. Without this grant, these replacements still should occur. So staff are pursuing endorsements from council to strengthen our current applications that go in at the end of the month for the direct delivery stream of the CHIP applications. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from council? Councilor Ramirez.
Thanks, Your Worship. Looks like we should have done this years ago, so it's good that we are applying for this. What happens if we don't get the money?
If I may.
Mm.
Staff would still recommend replacements of the 10th Avenue lift station, the Riverside lift station. So it would come through other budget means.
Further?
Possibly in 2026 or even later.
Sorry, the question specific to, like, would we continue to replace 10th in 2026? Yeah, it's well beyond its end of life, so the sooner the better. We either fund it or we keep chasing grants and crossing our fingers, which accepts a level of risk.
And while you're there, I'm sorry, engineer line, I'm not suggesting you can't ask a question, but the pressure issue with the Riverside lift station, so it can't overcome, in heavy rain events, can't overcome the pressure coming from the main lift station. Would you need to reroute the piping in order, like you said, there was a solution that potentially would have to get ahead of that and reroute the piping in order to do that?
If I may. So the engineers at ISL analyze this, and what we actually have to do is just stronger pumps at Riverside. So right now, the Riverside pumps, they're sized for the amount of like flow coming in, but they're not sized to overcome the pressure that it's pushing against, which is more. The main sewage lift station, I think it's something around 90% of the flows of the city go through that main sewage lift station right now, and only 10% at Riverside. So you could imagine the pumps are kind of sized for that. And the main sewage lift station pumps a lot further because it's down in Mount View. So they just have to be a stronger pump to be able to push against that flow coming from the main sewage lift station.
Thank you. Councilor McIsaac?
Thank you, Worship. I just had one question and that, not sure if it was completely clear to me in the report, but just thinking about the expansion that's going on in that particular area, and it's likely going to continue for some time. Planning for the fact that there will be a considerable number of, a greater number of units in that particular area, does that affect which of these choices is relevant? I'm not sure, like, I guess what the question I'm getting at is, for example, just replacing screening and so on, it doesn't actually elevate the capacity, and yet would appear we are going to need at some point elevated capacity there. So I wonder if you might speak to that.
If I may. Yes, so with the rehabilitation of the station, we are going to be increasing the size of the wet well, and the pumps are going to be more heavy duty for more capacity. For one main reason, and then also, so the main reason is that we are looking for at least 25 years of capacity. So it's like, how much more growth are we anticipating in these areas in 25 years? And I mean, it also speaks to the grant itself because it's looking to increase housing. And so all of the sizing was assessed using our new 4 units per property for the single family properties as well. So it's not just what we've previously thought about, it's using that greater population growth assessment.
Councilor Adi Kelly?
Thanks, Your Worship. It's the alternative solution 6 that we're looking at, engineer line, in the ISL report.
If I may, I don't have it in front of me, but it is the last one, which is the replacement of the lift station and reusing the old building wet well to put the screening unit in.
Perfect, thanks. Yeah, and it does speak to housing new larger pumps and repurpose to structure the screening unit. Okay, great, thank you. Can I also ask, you did mention that there's no limit to the amount of CHIP grants that we can apply for, because I sort of did wonder, you know, in like the grant lottery world, does CNL impact our ability to get these grants and vice versa? But it sounds like no.
If I may, when I went to like a info session on the grant applications, they actually recommended putting in separate applications because then one would live or die on its own merits. And even if you did have a really good one project, but you lumped it in with others, then you could lose that one application. So they're not penalizing us at all for putting in multiple applications, and they will live and die on their own merits.
Excellent, thank you. And if I may, Your Worship, so if we are needing to do this regardless of the grant, this one might be for you, CFO. If we had to look at borrowing as an option, can you just remind me again about our borrowing capacity, please, and thank you?
Thanks, Councillor Audia Kelly. I will need a minute just to bring up that exact number, please.
Councillor Nixon?
Thank you, Worship. I'm just curious about, it says in the report here, is there's limited information around PT stream grant delivery, the negotiations with the provinces and territories. Like, do we have any idea when that's going to be? Is there any sort of timeline or?
If I may, unfortunately, no. Like, we've been talking with the CHIF group, and so it is this $5 billion that's divided between the province, all the provinces and territories, right? So 5 billion divided by 12-ish, depending on, I don't know how they're going to do it. Population, I don't. But, and then so 50% of that funding will come from the government, and then the provinces and territories have to pony up at least 33%. So we're just really unsure on when that will all be resolved. And that's why we are thinking, let's apply for the direct delivery grant, get some applications in, and then we're not waiting, even though that one does seem like a better fit and more money. We don't want to lose a chance.
And if we apply for the, sorry, Councillor Nixon, if we apply for the direct delivery grant, and I know this is somewhere in the report, we can still apply under the, thank you.
We can apply to both, and we can choose which one to go forward with if we are awarded both. We're not being penalized one way or the other. So there's no loss by just putting applications out there.
Thank you. Councillor Nixon?
Yeah, and I guess this is the reason why we raise taxes, and this is why we put money into reserves, because of these situations.
Other questions, comments from council? Mr. Burdett?
Thank you. To answer Councillor Audia Kelly, Councillor Audia Kelly's question. And these are still 2023 numbers. Our 2024 ones aren't final yet, but we were allowed $4.9 million of annual loan payments, which at current interest rates would be about an $89 million loan over 30 years.
Thanks, CFO.
Let's avoid that if we can. I had one question that, thank you, Mr. Burdett, that your presentation raised is access and ventilation issues with the Riverside lift station. What does that mean exactly? Because having lived through the Sullivan disaster, we have a safe work procedure? We're not putting people in jeopardy going in and out of that building?
Thank you for that question. No, the access has more to do with that lift station only has double doors. It is and hard to get in, hard to have a lot of people in there because it's very small, and then really difficult to work in that wet well. Ventilation, again, if you open the double doors and there is fans, but it's not as good as other places, as other lift stations. So,
Thank you. There is a safe work procedure, of course, for.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Other questions, comments from council? Seeing none, I'll ask our corporate officer to read the recommendation.
Your Worship and Council, the staff recommendation is that Council endorse the City of Fernie's application to the Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund for the replacement of the 10th Avenue Sanitary Lift Station, and that Council endorse the City of Fernie's application to the Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund for the detailed design, replacement and expansion of the Riverside Sanitary Lift Station.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor McIsaac. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Engineer Line. We'll now hear from our Manager of Engineering on the C&L right-of-way costing outcomes report.
Oh, here we go. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here this evening to provide council with the outcomes of a project approved in the capital plan in December to complete the recosting of and design revisions to the CNL right-of-way trunk main realignment project and better prepare for grant opportunities such as the one being discussed tonight. ISL and city staff have completed the following general scope of work. We reviewed the utility designs provided by Shoesmith Enterprises Limited for infrastructure required to serve proposed development and verified their compatibility with the proposed water and sewer alignment, and essentially noted the vertical and horizontal adjustments needed to accommodate that. The portion of the project that passes through that land that is currently owned by SEL is approximately 540 meters of the 1,900 meter project length we're discussing tonight. Once the designs were revised, they were reviewed with the city engineering team and operators, and then ISL proceeded to provide a comprehensive summary of the probable construction costs for this realignment project and the development related infrastructure needs. And so you'll see the numbers have, of course, gone in the upward direction. Since 2022, the engineer's estimate for the project has increased from 6.8 million to 11.5 million. When looking at in more detail at the unit rates for the construction line items, on average, they've increased about 40% in the civil municipal infrastructure world. In addition to these market-based price increases, there have been some scope additions. So we can't say that that full cost increase has been from just market increases. A few of those, for example, when this project was last presented to you, the old estimate was just to replace lines under an existing gravel road and repair that road to the same standard that it's at. In this estimate, the infrastructure and road through the SEL lands is being realigned to represent an agreed upon road dedication alignment, and the city is sharing the costs of clearing and grubbing, bulk earth moving, drainage improvements, and road construction to an engineered standard, which will result in an improved road than the one that's currently there. And then some refinement of the infrastructure design, added some different service configurations, tie-ins of new development, addition of valves, that sort of thing. So the estimate for the project is here. The contingency on the project consists of a 15% construction contingency, as well as a 5% per year increase to account for these increasing costs that we're seeing. And the total project cost is now estimated to sit at 12.7 million. While this project is currently identified as a critical capital project, the city does not currently have funds saved or allocated to complete it. So external funding opportunities, such as this CHIP application that Engineer Line discussed earlier, are essential to securing and advancing these critical projects. And so that the CHIF application is to support communities in delivering longer term infrastructure and housing needs. And that PT stream that we're targeting does aim to preserve existing capacity and increase reliability to infrastructure. And therefore, this project aligns well with those funding objectives. And so at this time, we have prepared an application for the direct delivery stream. And as the agreement with the province has not been reached, we will apply at such time that that opens. And we can see the PT applicant guide is very similar to the direct delivery guide, and therefore we believe that the applications will largely be similar. So we're hopeful that we don't have to redo them. And should this grant not be successful, staff would intend to bring back a report on how we recommend funding a strategy to address this critical need. And tonight's request is for an endorsement of the grant application. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Engineer Weir. Councillor Audie Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. Engineer Weir, when we talk about it being critical, and I'm not really meaning to put you on the spot, but do the engineers have any idea of how imminent a serious problem could be with that with the right of way, because it does carry, as I understand it, water and sewer for a considerable portion of the town and could impact the L. So is there any sort of estimate at how fast we really need to get this done?
The estimate is not so much in a time frame. It is based on that geotechnical hazard being the main concern and making this such a critical project. The geotechnical report indicated that the factors of safety are not where they should be for this type of infrastructure, and recommended, I believe, in 2021, $6 million just to stabilize the slope, nothing to do with replacing the infrastructure. The geotechnical report did have a line in there sort of saying, we don't think that the failure is imminent, but we highly recommend that this be addressed in the short term. So those engineers weren't willing to put a time on their recommendation for failure, but they were urging us that it's not adequate stability to be holding that infrastructure.
Further? Councillor Ramirez?
Thanks, Your Worship. Again, I don't think anyone here will say no to this application. I think my concern, Your Worship, is this looks like a solid plan B. What's the plan A here is my question. Like, two funding streams, we don't know what the probability of success is. I know a report is going to come back regarding costing, but what's the thinking here if this doesn't come through?
Maybe I'll refer to our CFO. I think it would be a blend of utility fees, borrowing. We don't have this money available.
I don't have anything of substance to add to what Ms. Weir's just said. I mean, the fact is that there's not enough money in our reserves, so it would be a blend of borrowing, and that the whole idea. And I mean, our plan, I would say it is kind of half plan A, in that we have been working on getting these projects shovel ready so that we can apply for these grant streams when they're open. And I understand that it feels like a plan B, but plan A, you know, it's in the budget right now is being funded from borrowing, because, you know, we do have some reserve funds available for projects like this, such as that 2.6 for, I forget what, Growing Communities Fund. And there's also the gas tax reserves, but this also depends on what the ultimate cost of the fire hall is going to be, and how all of these two major projects and the one in the previous item kind of flows into our medium-term strategy. So we're working on updating our numbers and applying for these grants. And if they fall through, then that'll affect our next year's budget planning.
Further?
Thanks, Your Worship. Yes. Where I'm getting at, CFO, is like, are we going to wait till the result of this application is the question? Because the way I'm seeing this report, right, it's been 5 years. 2021 was the last time we costed this. And every year there seems to be one meeting where we have spoken about C&L, right? It's been 5 years now, and we haven't done much other than understanding the geotechnical issues and all those things. I appreciate that, but it's still not to a point where we can actually really physically address this impending infrastructure deficit. So it's not meant to be a question. It's some thought. I don't know if you can add any color to this. I'm just worried that we'll wait for this application, and then if it doesn't come through, we'll be back to square one, and that's another year wasted.
If I may, we have done a fair amount of work on the design, and it is what I would call shelf ready. Like, we just need to move it from a 75% design to 100% design and tender. So that's not the bulk of the work and finding the solution. You'll see all that long list of looking at whether we could reline it, looking where we could realign the whole infrastructure. So now we have a shovel ready solution. You know, if we were directed to tender this project next month, it would not be hard. It is really funding that's holding us back.
Thank you. Councillor Adia Kelly?
Thanks, Your Worship. I just want to make sure I understood actually engineered line correctly. We aren't really sure of the timeline of the grant process either, right? So, I mean, it could be 6 months. I'm sure the election might delay things as well. But that's great to know that you would be ready in quite short order if we did decide, okay, look, we need to deal with it and we can't rely on grants or worry about grants. So thank you.
Councillor Hamilton and then Councillor McIsaac.
Thank you. Councillor Adia Kelly's comment there just twigged a question. With the election impending, do we know that this funding is secured, or is there potential risk that if we have a change in government, this program gets axed?
Mayor, through to council, my understanding is that it was indicated in the 2024 budget and committed, and you know, the grant program is open for application. And so as far as I'm aware, there's no discussion of it being axed, but you never know what governments can do, I guess.
And we have to behave as though it's going ahead. Councillor McIsaac.
Thank you, Worship. I guess that leads me into my question and sort of bouncing off Councillor Ramadas's line of questioning of, I mean, I support going after the grant, getting the money, as you know, all the options and so on. But there is a feeling with this report, and we've had this come to us many times over the last couple of years. And there's been lots of work done on this. And I really do feel like we are reaching the point that's where we're going to have to pull the pin at some point. And I'm not sure that I have a really good sense from the reports that we've had of, is there a date where our engineering team or our consultant engineering team have said, you really need to start putting shovels in the ground by such and such date? And I realize that's a very fine thing to discern from a bit of coarser information, but I would like to know if, as you know, as Councilor Ramadas asked, is this something we should be preparing? And I realize the CFO had mentioned that it's already in the budget for borrowing. Should we be preparing for that in the event that this doesn't come through? Start making the decisions now, knowing that we're going to pull the pin in 2026, regardless of what the situation is. And I'd like to get a sense, if it's possible, if that's the situation, that we should be planning for that.
I'll look to our manager of engineering first. And
Can you remind me of your first question? Oh, it was about the time. Mayor, through to councillor. The timing, no, like it comes down to our integrated infrastructure capital plan and how we're weighing the high risk and the high known risk and the high consequence, and then saying the project, it comes to the top as critical. It doesn't have, and you know, everyone will say, yeah, short term, critical now, but nobody will say, oh, but it'll be okay if you do it in 3 years, or just the unknown nature of it. We have not been able to pin down, you know, an answer on, you have to do this by a certain date. Yep.
Yep.
Thanks. And that's kind of what I suggest. And I will, you know, commend staff. And I feel like the level of urgency has been communicated well to council. It's just that where that urgency line should be drawn for us as to when we should force a decision. I feel like we're very dependent on receiving that information from you. And while I want to do the grant, but I also feel like we can't wait forever to start moving on the project. So thanks.
And if I may add, there's another report coming to you about the wastewater treatment plant and the costs associated with that in April. So like our CFO said, we are collecting a lot of these updated numbers on significant infrastructure projects, and figuring out how we're going to do them all in the short term is certainly a challenge to tackle.
Councillor Adia Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. Well, those were my questions earlier about the risk level and the timeline. So thanks for adding some additional. This one might be for our CFO. And also thank you for bringing up the wastewater solution, because we're on the clock for that. And I think we've already been granted extensions. CFO, should we have to look to borrowing for the wastewater, the CNL, the fire hall, are those all separate referendums that we'd have to hold, or do we have to hold referendums for all of those borrowing things? Like, can you highlight the rules for us a little bit and also what the timelines would look like? Because if we're getting to critical, like we've run out of time for our wastewater solution, it sounds to me like we're really running the clock out on CNL. And of course, right, we all know that our fire hall is a major issue as well. So could we talk a little bit about what that might look like if we had to take it to referendum? And can we have one referendum that addresses more than one thing, or how does that work?
Thanks, Councillor Ardia Kelly. I mean, depending on the timing of when all these would come to light, if we're going to borrow for each project, then yes, you would need a separate, you would at least need a separate question. You might be able to time them on the same referendum, but you would need two different questions. But I would say it's unlikely that they would all time on the same referendum. So I would expect multiple in that scenario. And then, but there is a limit as well. That's an approval free limit that we can borrow money without a referendum. And that amount is an annual payment of $863,000, which, apologies, which is about a $15 million loan that we could go and borrow without a referendum, according to the provincial government rules. And I'm sorry, was there a third question that in there that I forgot? And, you know, I mean, this kind of ties into what Councillor Ramadas was saying earlier, and I don't at all disagree with what he was saying. Every person in this room is feeling this crunch, and, you know, every municipality in the country is feeling the crunch. And, you know, worst case scenario is that there's a major tax increase, and other communities have already done that. You know, there was a Sawyers a couple of years ago that did 39% to fund major projects like this. So that would be like absolute last resort, but it certainly is an option that council would have to consider at some point.
And just following up on that, in a sense, having the loan payment, we have to make the loan payment. So that would add, if I recall correctly, when we talked about the fire hall, a $10 million borrowing was going to be approximately $223 per year for the average household when houses were valued in the $890,000 range. Is my memory right, CFO?
I'm sure it is, but interest rates have come down since then. So a $10 million loan right now would amount to about $159 a house, or a 6% tax increase if we were funding those payments purely from tax.
Thank you.
Well, as I understand, we were at one point directed by the Ministry of Environment that wastewater infrastructure in particular is the one stream that doesn't require a referendum because it is so critical to the community. Stream, yeah. Mr. Heisler.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to, jumping back a couple of questions, I kind of wanted to add how I perceive the issue. No, if you're looking for the failure date of this lift station or the sewage lagoons or the CNL, you kind of just wash that away and just understand, like, I perceive it as these are our highest risks. And when should we start planning for them? Well, the longer we wait, the longer we're passively accepting more and more risk on them failing. So the most important part is like what we're doing right now, getting the high priority ones shovel ready, pursuing grants, and then starting to discuss about exactly what's happening right here. How are we going to fund this if that doesn't work? And as a reminder, we did apply for a grant in the past on the CNL right away, which we have failed. So we are doing it again. But now this discussion is kind of where we are.
Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. Just to clarify the criticality and the nature of the CNL, is it the actual infrastructure degrading to the point of failure, or is the critical risk that we're facing the geotechnical and like that slope slides as a result of the pipes? I appreciate, but.
Mayor, through to council, yes, it's the geotechnical. The infrastructure is actually only 40 odd years old. We have had several leaks on the water line, and those do contribute to further slope hazards. But really the ultimate concern is the location and the geotechnical hazard. If that line was leaking and it wasn't on a slope, those leaks would have less consequence of making the whole line fail.
Councilor Ramirez?
Thanks, Your Worship. The question I had was more around even in the best case scenario, right? Like if you got the PT stream as well as the direct stream for 6.3 and $2.1 million, you're still looking at about four and a bit million dollars on the hook for the municipality itself. So regardless of whether this application succeeds or not, we need to be planning for that $4.5 million. How are we going to fund that also? Just wanted to add to this discussion, not seeking any answer, but an observation here.
Councilor Nixon? Oh, Mr. Burdick?
Oh, yeah, thank you. I just, again, totally agree with Councillor Ramirez. And the answer is the same in that we've had these 4 or 5 major projects now on our docket for 4 or 5 years. And we're starting to get close to really nail down how much all of these are going to cost. And, you know, if we are responsible for our $4 million portion, if we get these grants, again, that'll fund part of the funding strategy for the whole portfolio that we have to fund. You know, it'll be a little bit easier, but it still won't be easy. You know, so there could be a blend of a smaller utility fee increase and then using those reserves that I talked about earlier and so on. But yeah, thank you.
Councilor Nixon?
Thank you, Worship. Just curious about, I think you touched on it a little bit, Manager Weir, but has there been any leaks since? Has there been any leaks on that shift? Nothing? Okay. And then I just wanted to say that, you know, I want to give kudos to staff because this has been on the books since 2020. And this is, you know, they've been identifying, they've been looking at it, they're getting it ready. We've applied for 1 grant already. This is the plan A, right? And it does show to the higher levels of government that we are doing something about this. We're not just ignoring it, right? And just in case something bad does happen. But I mean, it just goes to show you build it right, you build it correctly, you don't cheap out. It emphasizes the huge infrastructure deficit that municipalities across Canada are facing, right? So it's a real challenge. We're not the only one, so.
Councilor Kelly?
Thanks, Your Worship. I thought I had read in the reports that we had 7 known leaks on the CNL lines. Did we mitigate those?
Mayor, through to council, yes, we've mitigated the leaks that are known to us.
Thank you.
I was curious. It wasn't clear to me, Manager Weir, the cathodic protection system, you know, used to improve the corrosion resistance of the pipe. Was that ever actually installed?
No, the cathodic protection was not installed. That was kind of put on pause when we investigated the options for doing mitigation measures in that alignment or realigning all of the infrastructures. But it's certainly still an option should we have to leave that infrastructure in that alignment for some time. It's relatively inexpensive and may help.
Okay, thank you. And, you know, there's been some talk about plan A, plan B, but I think the work that has been done, you know, reflecting on Councillor Nixon's comments, it actually goes back significantly further than 2020. The report talks about leaks in 2017, and there has been a stepwise process, including working with the landowner and in partnership for the road dedication to ensure that we put it in the right place at the, you know, with the final decision is the right decision, I guess, is the way you've scoped the design and eliminated going across the river and through the annex, I think makes a whole lot of sense to me. So, yeah, again, reflecting on Councillor Nixon's comments, kudos for the work that's been done on this, but, you know, it is one of those things that keeps folks awake at night, I think, in terms of the risk that we're accepting. Councillor Ramirez?
Just to be clear, Your Worship, when I said plan A or plan B, I meant funding I didn't
Oh, no.
mean, I
Yeah,
didn't
no,
mean
I
the
need-
project
yeah,
plan itself.
yeah.
I'm saying like, how are we going to fund this?
Yeah,
And this
yeah.
felt like a plan B to me in terms of funding.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Yeah, but no, I appreciate that. So with that, I'll ask our corporate officer to read the recommendation.
Your Worship and Council, the staff recommendation is that Council endorse the City of Fernie's application to Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund for replacement of and realignment of water and waste water trunk mains from the lands known as the CNL right-of-way to Burma Road.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Audie Kelly. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Manager Weir. That moves us on to item 11.3, development variance permit request for 661 3rd Avenue. Manager Semolini.
Thank you, Your Worship. A little bit ironic that we moved to adopt an amendment to our delegation bylaw, and we also have a variance coming forward in the same night. But this is a development variance permit. We call it major versus minor, being the difference between needing to come to council or not, albeit this is a fairly minor project if you want to look at it that way. It's to vary the side yard setback at 661 3rd Avenue, so just across the street and down a little ways, from 1.5 meters down to 1 meter for a new carport to be built over the existing driveway. Just quickly, it's residential small scale zoning. Typically, we don't go below 1.5 meters, which is why we had that 1.5 meter threshold set as a minor variance. Although in this case, there are some circumstances that make sense. There is very little neighborhood impact in this case. The proposed carport will cover an existing driveway. So as opposed to them tearing up their driveway or adding 1.5 meters onto the other side of their driveway, if they even can, given where the house sits, it takes care of that. And also there's a snow shedding issue from the neighboring carport, which is less than 1.5 meters from the property line as well, where snow sheds off of the neighboring building onto the existing driveway. So this proposal takes care of that. The existing neighborhood context is also brought into play, where there are a lot of existing non-conforming buildings, a lot of buildings that already sit at less than 1.5 meters. And it's also noted that the right across the street is where the 692 3rd Avenue project, or the multi-use multifamily project, is taking place. And the setbacks are allowed to be right to the property line there, but they will be right to the property line as well. So again, very little neighborhood impact, and planning are supporting this variance moving forward. So very quickly, our recommendation tonight is for council to approve the application and move forward for approval of issuance at the next council meeting.
Thank you, Manager Semolini. Questions from council? Councillor McIsaac.
Thank you, Worship. Just one. Are we not able to intervene and have the next door landowners stop having the snow shedding onto this particular thing, and that's resulting in all of this? Not that they shouldn't be allowed to build a car shed, but is there not some intervention that can happen there to stop this?
Your Worship, through to Councillor McIsaac, it would be considered a private property matter. So I mean, if the two property owners had some sort of agreement or something, or that could be done, but the city doesn't typically get involved. There's not like a bylaw or something like that prevents that. So we wouldn't step in.
In new construction, we do consider snow shedding onto neighboring property or public property, but this would be grandfathered.
That's correct, Your Worship. So if it were a new subdivision, new neighborhood, we would ensure that whatever construction was happening there, that snow shedding wouldn't happen, or we at least take steps to try to mitigate that. But given that this is a historical context, it's just existing as it is.
Okay, thank you, because I remembered the same thing too, that we'd had discussions about the snow shedding in the past too, so I wasn't sure why we weren't able to intervene in this case. Thank you.
Other questions, comments from council? Seeing none, I'll ask our corporate officer to read the recommendation.
Your worship and council, the staff recommendation is that council approve development variance permit application number DVPA 601 and give notice of their intention to consider the issuance of development variance permit number DVP 601 for 661 3rd Avenue, Fernie.
Moved by Councillor McIsaac, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Thank you, Manager Simoline.
Thank you, worship. Thanks, council.
Item 11.4. Welcome back, engineer line, our salt and sand shelter design and construction.
I'm getting better at this tonight. So my second presentation today is about the winter sand storage structure. $350,000 has been approved by council during the early budget request of December 2024 for this project. In addition to what we're talking about today, the city is preparing the site for structure and providing a gravel pad for the structure to be built on. So the total project budget is not just the structure itself, but it's the site preparation as well. As part of the city's snow and ice management duties, staff spread a salt and sand mix over roads and sidewalks. The mix is currently stored outdoors in a large pile at city yards, as you can see on the right-hand picture, insufficiently covered by tarps. It's the big white pile right there. Snow and rain events cause the pile to freeze. Daily operators spend valuable time of up to 2 hours freeing the mixture from the pile and breaking up the frozen blocks to fit into the sanders. Additionally, that wet or frozen mix doesn't distribute evenly from the machine, so you get clumps on the roadways and sidewalks. The city plans to install a structure to store the sand and salt mix out of the elements. This structure will resolve those operational issues and result in a more efficient delivery of the city's snow and ice management program, and they can focus more on clearing those roads and clearing those sidewalks instead of struggling in the yard. The objective of the request for proposals was to procure a really basic storage structure as what is shown on the left. It's a 3-sided tent structure, and the project plan doesn't include any lighting, paving, or any other utility components. It's just a very basic structure. 7 proposals were received, which was great. They were evaluated on a criteria that emphasized price and the team experience putting it together. Bandmaster received the highest rank in the evaluations by all members on the committee. They are a BC-based group that provides bright span building system structures with an in-house installation crew and equipment. Spanmaster has been designing, selling, installing, and maintaining similar structures since 1999, and they say they've built over 500 winter sand shelters. Brightspan manufactures structures in Ontario, so all Canada-based, even though that wasn't actually emphasis in the RFP. So I'm here today to ask council to authorize staff to award to Spanmasters.
Thank you, engineer line. Councillor Adi Kelly.
Thanks, your worship. Engineer line, I just wanted to ask you a question about the lifespan, no pun intended, of the structure. It was kind of.
If I may, so this is like a tent structure, so the fabric will have to be replaced, and typically that is 25 to 30 years down the road that only the fabric on top will have to be replaced. And rips can occur as well, and they can be repaired by Spanmaster or other fabric tent providers. So yes, it's not the same as like a brick building or a concrete building, but price for the use is much better and what we need in this situation.
Further, your worship?
Yeah.
Can it be, and thanks, I think that's actually not really temporary. And I know there's been comments made about the field house, which also has quite the lifespan. So just putting that out there. But I wanted to say thank you very much for the work on this. And I'm really excited actually for this one because it actually is going to really improve things for our team, the safety of it, just not wasting material. I was worried about our staff when I saw that scary sort of hill thing. So thank you so much for all the work you've done.
Other questions, comments from council? Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Worship. So there's one section here about the US tariffs announcement, and I'm just wondering, is this Canadian or is this mostly Canadian? I know that you said it's a BC-based company and it also has Ontario, but I'm just curious about that one comment about tariffs and stuff like that. Thank you.
If I may, when I wrote this, the Trump tariffs had just come out and we just don't know. So it is like everything was proposed in Canadian funds. And as I said, it's a BC based company and the tent itself comes from Ontario, but where does the steel come from? I don't know. So, but looking at the total cost, it's like $209,000. We wouldn't have to come back to council to approve any increase. And I believe my total budget has sufficient capacity right now if there is an increase needed. So we wouldn't have to come back and the total budget can, if there is a tariff thing, we just don't know.
Is there a warranty on the structure and the tent at all, Engineer Line?
There is a warranty. I don't remember off the top of my head the number of years, but yes, they are warranted.
Thank you. I thought there might be, but I appreciate that. Other questions? Seeing none, if our corporate officer could read the recommendation.
The staff recommendation is that council authorize staff to award their contract for the winter sand shelter structure to Span Master Structures Ltd for $209,872.58, excluding GST, and that council authorize the mayor and corporate officer to execute all documentation to execute the contract.
Moved by Councillor Adia Kelly, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Engineer Line. And just looking at the time, and I apologize to the people who are waiting for the next discussion, I wouldn't mind taking a 5-minute recess for a bio break, please and thank you. Could we reconvene, please? Mr. Burdett? Thank you. Councillor McIsaac? Welcome back. We're moving on to item 11.5, the Resort Municipality Initiative Report from Director Logan, Director of Parks, Facilities and Recreation.
Thanks, Your Worship. Today, I present a report outlining the Resort Development Strategy, the RDS. I seek your endorsement to proceed with its development for 2025 to 2027. Full disclosure, I prepared this report before leaving on holidays, and I got some assistance from the CAO and the Director of Finance, so I may look to Bryn for some questions. The report provides an outline of the RDS and ensures that we meet the provincial submission deadline of April 30th, 2025. Before the RDS provincial approval, the council will be given the opportunity to endorse the draft RDS. Staff's recommendation includes accepting the attached project charter for the RDS and names the project team. 5 key priorities I'll show on slide number 4, and the budget for the tourism program service and events, and a draft list of core events that have various levels of funding and in-kind support. This is the area I'd like the council to provide some dialogue around, so I can take that information to the committee for consideration when developing the strategy. A bit of a background. Since 2009, Fernie's been a part of the Resort Municipality Initiative, which provides funding for tourism, infrastructure, and visitor experiences. The last RDS covered from 2022 to 2024, and we're now developing the new strategy for the next 3 years. Through discussions with the Executive Director of Tourism, Fernie, I've summarized what I believe will assist in the development of the RDS. First, clarifying city process and timelines by ensuring that the committee understands procurement, permitting, and legislative steps through early presentations from city staff. Define roles and responsibilities by establishing clear project charters for each RMI funded project, outlining the responsibilities, budgets, and timelines. Enhance transparency and commitment by clarifying member roles and time commitments. Focus on fewer, higher impact infrastructure projects that improve existing assets and support the tourism master plan. Improve the communication by aligning internal and external messaging about RDS, Resort Development Strategy, MRI, Resort Municipality Initiative, and MRDT. I can't remember that acronym. Update the city website and share the draft RDS with the public and stakeholders, providing feedback through a survey. And also setting geographic boundaries by prioritizing RMI funding within Fernie and adjacent areas, including Fernie Alpine Resort if partnerships arise. The funding breakdown of the RMI includes 70% for tourism infrastructure projects, 30% for program and events, and a portion for administrative costs. This ensures that funds are effectively allocated for maximum impact. The Executive Director of Tourism, Fernie, and I developed a draft list of projects as a starting point for the committee's consideration when discussing projects using the 70% of tourism infrastructure category. The strategy for refining the list with the committee will be to develop fewer, more impactful projects, thereby better utilizing the limited resources available for its implementation. Some examples of previously completed tourism infrastructure projects include the water and electrical services to annex parks for events, the purchase of 3 new shuttle buses, funding for the development of destination trails, parklets in Annex Park, and partial funding for the skateboard covered area, skate park covered area. Tourism program services and events make up 30% of the 3-year funding and have traditionally been more accessible to community partners and stakeholders for executing animation services and events. Delegations to the council for event support have resulted in the use of this RMI from this category, which is broken down in the next slide. This category is where I'd like the council to provide some feedback on its use. A proposed draft core events list has been drafted in no particular order. These events have been proven to have a positive impact on citizens, enhance the visitor experience, and contribute to Fernie's economy. RMI funding has been committed to some of these events, which are explained in more detail in the report. It's essential to note that prior to assigning RMI funds through delegations, using the tourism program service and events category, the 30%, events such as the holiday kickoff and Grizz Days, for example, were historically funded through a mix of taxation and RMI. Some events on this list require joint investment to ensure their continued success. Allowing a portion of this category to remain as seed money to support new events and initiatives is important. Additionally, animation activities such as grooming, murals, and the ambassador program were also included in this category.
Sorry, Director Logan. Councilor Ramdass?
Thanks, Your Worship. Just with respect to Canada Day, in light of the services organization taking over it, didn't our commitment to Canada Day decrease going forward?
No, I believe our funding that we allocated, budgeted for Canada Day will continue to support that event. No, it was 7,000.
I remember this. Sorry, Your Worship. I remember the $7,000 figure from this budget.
Yeah.
But that was a drop from previous years, correct? Like we were spending 50+ grand or something on Canada Day.
That I can't speak to. Mr. Burdett?
Councilor Armadas, are you saying 15 plus or 50? Oh, no, it wasn't quite that much. The budget in previous years is 15, but we've committed the 65 to the walk event, and then but we still have 15 in the budget. So actually, our budget for Canada Day specifically has dropped by 15 minus the 65. So Canada Day, yes, has dropped, but the overall budget has remained the same, 15. Yeah.
Councilor Adia Kelly?
Thanks, Your Worship. While we're on this slide, Director Logan, if you don't mind, one of our earlier speakers, speaking on behalf of another member of the community, asked about this core list and how this core list, I'm hearing you say that it's proposed, how this proposed list came to be narrowed down. Could you maybe enlighten us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's a combination of a lot of things, discussions with the executive director and myself. There is a reporting requirement typically from when we hand out some money from this category that we're talking about, the events and animation category. The reporting on some of these events is quite good. That gives us an indication that it is making an impact in the visitor experience, which is one of the key uses of the RMI money. And then, of course, Canada Day is a bit of a staple almost everywhere. But it is a draft list, and it is meant to facilitate discussion with council right now, and also to take that discussion to this committee for further discussion.
Further?
Thanks, Director.
Who is the committee? It's unclear to me from the report who makes up the committee from this point forward.
It's actually included in the project charter that was attached. At the very end, it does name the participants, the proposed participants, which includes myself as the chair, the executive director, Tourism Fernie, as vice chair. The executive director for any district arts council, an indigenous representative, either the YQT or from the Tanaha Nation Council Society, the manager of finance, who I work closely with RMI related things from the city, executive director of Trails Alliance, executive director Chamber of Commerce, executive director Fernie Heritage Society, and executive director Elk River Alliance, with support from our deputy corporate officer for helping the committee.
Thank you. I did see that in the project charter. It would have been helpful to have it in the report because you've referred to it several times. Just Councillor Ravenous?
Thanks, Your Worship. Like knowing that it came from Courtney Baker, what you said, Councillor, I'm just wondering why is the senior center not here in this list? Maybe that would be the quick fix here.
Councillor McIsaac.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, from bouncing off of both those questions, if the goal is to have a discussion about potential projects, it might be helpful if we knew what the criteria list was beyond good reporting. Like, what other things are being used to consider for events? Is it timing? Is it scale? Is it participation? Like, how has that been done? Or how should we be contributing to that?
So to answer that question through the chair, the executive director and I have actually been working quite extensively on that application process for accessing some of that events and animation money. Last year, I forget the amount, might have been $30,000 in 2 intake periods where people applied for it, and there was a criteria that had to be met, and most of it's laid out by the province for the impact from tourism, enhancing the visitor experience. I could have attached that to the document, but it's quite long and it's still in draft form at this point. The conversation that we're hoping to sort of drive out of this is if this recommendation is accepted, there's only $20,000 left for the community to access for that funding stream, which is low in my opinion. So there's already been money allocated. It's in the report in the table there through GrisDiz. If the $15,000 for Wednesday night socials and the few $1,000s for holiday kickoff, and then the grooming collaborative also takes a huge chunk of that as well. It doesn't actually leave a lot for new events as seed money, which is an event such as Gravel Grind was born from accessing some of that money, and now it's self-sufficient and they have excellent reporting, and it shows clearly that it does enhance the visitor experience and brings people to the community specifically and puts heads in beds. So there is an extensive criteria, but it does sort of outline a little bit more than what I'm saying in the document provided by the province for developing this RDS attached.
Further?
Yes, thank you. So am I to assume then, without having that document here, that the criteria provided by the province were used by yourself and the Tourism Fernie ED to select this particular list of projects? Is that accurate?
Through the chair, yes, that's 100% accurate. And it is attached to the report as the RDS strategy. And under the 30% bucket, we'll say, it does get specific sort of on what your goals are for that category. And so you're exactly right. That document that we were creating or refining from previous years was following those guidelines.
And just further, thank you, Your Worship. So the one thing that I didn't see there, and it was interesting because you touched upon it with regards to the discussion about the gravel grind, is sustainability. And so one of the questions I have, and this is coming about from the discussions that we've had around the table previously about things like community granting and so on, and that is, how do we make available the limited funds to a broader spectrum of groups? And one of the solutions to that was by ensuring that no one set of groups gets to continuously dominate those requests, that they're limited over number of times they can come back and ask over a period of time and so on. I think a lot of events do need that seed capital and seed support from staff and so on to get off the ground. As it were, I think that's a very valid use of the money and so on. But I think there is sort of an expectation that at some point, an event will either become self-sustaining through other mechanisms and so on or not. And I'm just wondering, has that been part of the criteria for selection, and or perhaps maybe even a better question is, should it be part of the criteria for selection going forward? Should we be picking events to support that can become self-sustaining so that we can then support new and upcoming events? I think what I'm hearing from you with regards to this particular thing is, if we pick this specific list and they're going to need continuous support, there will never be much money in the bucket. There will never be any available for new and upcoming events. Is that a fair assessment? And I guess I'm wondering what you have, if you have any thoughts specifically about sustainability. Thank you.
Yeah, on the sustainability piece, I do strongly believe that there needs to be some form of taxation or operating costs included in some of these core events. Like Grizz Days, for example, we're funding it strictly through RMI, and it's a huge chunk, $40,000, where typically the city operating budget would pay for some of that event, therefore freeing up additional RMI for other events. To the point of the list, it is a draft list. I'll emphasize that again. And the discussions I've had with the executive director is that it is a list that will change through different strategies. So the next year's strategy, it should be evaluated again. Is it working? Is Wham Bam truly a core event? Is it not? Maybe there's something else that makes the cut. There was comments about the Indigenous component. Does the reconciliation walk make the cut? Does that draw tourism? So these are all types of things that need to be discussed, and this list would be evolving over time.
Councillor Adia Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. Actually, a couple of things, if you don't mind to indulge me, Your Worship. I think it would be behoove us to have some consultation with seniors about this. I don't think we should be leaving them out. And I don't say that that was, deliberately, and maybe there was consultation with seniors, but I think they are an important part of the community and we should consider them. Going a little further with what Councillor McIsaac said, I would like to see some events become self-sustaining, and I can say this, I believe, Councillor can't, but example, Wapiti. There maybe have been a point in time where there was grant funding giving to them, but they gradually become self-sustaining. So it would be nice, you mentioned gravel grind, to have that possibly be a part of this. Some things, obviously, we would like to maintain it to be free for people, right? To have, broad groups of people be able to go. But if we start funding it more and more out of taxation and operating budgets, well, then it's really not free, right? People are just paying for it in a different way. So I think that needs to be taken into consideration. Like, how long would we be looking at supporting an event before we maybe expected it to be self-sustaining? Perhaps some elements of some events, there could be an entrance fee, that kind of thing. So I hope we would sort of consider that, and maybe we would want to set aside, I don't know if we can set aside some money to seed new events that people come forward. I think Councillor McIsaac made a really valid point there.
Yep, good points there. And I'm hearing loud and clear. And we have discussed this while developing that application process and the review process for scoring them as well. The returning requests and how big are they, and are they going down over time, and should we award it 3 years in a row? Those types of questions are being talked about. So I have someone taking notes, and I am recording those comments. I had another thought, but I've lost it. I'm sorry.
Councillor Ramadaz.
Thanks, Your Worship. It was pretty related to what the two councillors were saying. Actually, procedurally, this is what is confusing me here. Like, what are we voting in for, right? Like, if I say yes for us to go ahead with the strategy itself, am I also endorsing this core events list? I feel like there is an opportunity to kind of frame this in a different way where you're talking about the strategy. Are we going ahead with the consultation and another amendment that just shows these core events? Are we in or out of or all these?
Yeah, I actually had exactly the same question as I went through the report and are we at the end endorsing this list, or does this list continues to be notional or draft and is through the consultative process with the committee, we refine this? Does the RDS come back to council before it is finally submitted?
Yep, to answer that question, the RDS draft will come back for council's final endorsement, probably concurrently with going to the province as a draft, where they'll provide comments. You'll also likely provide comments. We'll also have comments from surveys that are out to stakeholders and the public. And then all of that feedback hopefully will be incorporated. So part of what we're here today to do is to endorse this report, the project charter attached, and it's following the guidelines of the RDS guide document provided by the province. And part of what you're doing is empowering me and this committee in order to deliver on that strategy. And I am acting on your behalf, taking your comments, considerations, discussion to that group.
So you don't need us, just for clarity, you don't need us to say yes to this list at this juncture. You're really asking us at the end of the report to endorse the continued development of the RDS strategy in the manner that you've presented under the project charter.
That is correct.
Okay.
There is opportunity to provide comments on the list itself.
Of course.
If council wishes to. It's clear that council is endorsing some of these events through the allocation of funds through the delegations that have appeared.
Thank you. Councillor McIsaac.
Thank you, Worship. I'm going to veer away from the list. The question that I have goes back to, it's in the report, there's a reference to our resolution back from April 9th, that supporting Tourism Fernie's application to renew, all that stuff, blah, blah, blah. In there, one of the components of that resolution was that the further that mayor and council will enter into a collaborative dialogue with the board of directors of Tourism Fernie to elaborate on and potentially expand the uses of MRDT, more specifically OAP MRDT funds as allowed by legislation, including the application of those funds towards the provision and support of affordable housing to meet the needs of citizens of Fernie. So your discussion with Tourism Fernie, has it broached upon the discussion about affordable housing?
Through the chair, no, it has not. Primarily, the discussions that have happened since the summer of last year are on the basis of improving the relationship and understanding each organization's priorities related to the use of RMI. I'm trying to better understand myself the use of MRDT and how it fits. The plan, the guide itself says the two funds should complement each other but not overlap. Which is part of one of the 5 priorities for me through the process of developing this strategy, is to enhance the communication, understand a bit more, and be very transparent through our website and communications with everyone on the committee on what the uses of those funds can be used for and what they're currently being used for. But no discussions on housing.
Okay.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that, Mr. Logan. And I think, well, for council's benefit, and for the public, of course, we did receive a letter from Tourism Fernie that we've since responded to, and I'm actually meeting with the executive director Thursday morning to, I think, will advance that conversation that you've referenced. You're welcome. Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, sort of like I look at this and I go, okay, so I'm trying to understand it. And it was always a bit of a mystery, the resort development strategy. But I think that, and I look at the project and the charter and stuff like that, and it's well written. But I think given the significance of this entire thing in shaping our community priorities and all the rest of it, allocating municipal and provincial funds because they are tax dollars, I think we need an elected council representative on that team. Just to be there and to it would ensure council oversight and enhance accountability, and I think it would improve communication as well. And I'm not suggesting that, you know, I mean, maybe we discuss prior, like I see a bunch of issues here. There's also the burden of tourism on our from my perspective, there is a burden of tourism on our community, on our taxpayers, and through the roads and through the sewer and wastewater and all the stuff that we were discussing tonight, including the budget. And I think that we really need to have somebody in there speaking up for the taxpayer as well. So that would be my suggestion from for this project, for the project team as well. So.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Adia Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. Actually, Councillor Nixon, I would like to support what you said. I think it's a valid point. I was wondering again, I'm really sorry, Director Logan. I know you gave us timeline, but would you mind refreshing my memory on the timeline? Because we do have our strategy meetings coming up as well, Your Worship, in June.
In June.
So if you wouldn't mind, Director.
I think we have a draft submitted by April 30th.
April 30th.
Yeah, through the chair. Couple comments. We also only got this RDS guide, I think, a month ago. So preparations were made earlier using the previous strategy. It hasn't, or the previous guide, it hasn't changed a ton. The dates are very similar to previous years. The approval process is basically by April. The ministry will finalize, the ministry provides the 2025 RMI allocations in April 2025, the draft RDS with all the projected RMI allocations is submitted to the ministry by April 30th. Then the ministry reviews and provides comments, which we anticipate council will provide comments, and we'll also do our survey at the same time. They'll provide those back by May 2025. And then the RDS should be complete, reviewed, and approved by the ministry by June 30th. 90% of the funding allocations for the year of 2025 and 2026 will be distributed in July 2025. And then we're good for the next 3 years.
If you don't mind, I just thank you for that, because I do see where Counselor's going, and I think he makes some valid points. And also, like for me, I look at okay, I know our shoulder seasons are getting smaller, but what about our shoulder seasons? So I'm looking at example, I don't see Chautauqua, I don't see the Fall Fair, things like that. So I would like to go a little deeper with the list if this is something we're committing to for 3 years.
Mr.
If
Logan.
I may, through the chair. So part of the discussion tonight is supposed to be about this 30%, which is the money that we're talking about. Part of it's already been allocated to the list, three of the events on the list. There's $20,000 remaining. Typically, there's been more than that year over year, which we would then allow Chautauqua, for example, to apply through that process with the document we're creating that would go through a matrix of scoring, which would include things like, is it a shoulder season event, which gives it a higher score. So there is all this in place. The discussion I'm hoping is about that $20,000. Is it enough? If you adopt what's been presented today, that's all that's left in that bucket remaining. So that means that maybe there's only one intake, maybe there's two intakes of $10,000. That's not a lot of money to go around. And I do have some examples of what other municipalities do. And they contribute a lot more money for events specifically through taxation. RMI complements it through this 30%. And it allows a little more flexibility year over year for applications to come in and help support seed money for startup.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Logan. It's difficult sometimes, though, to, given your report, to know, for example, $65,000 to the Winter Grooming Collaborative. Like, does that achieve what it's meant to achieve? What is the reporting for that? Is that the right amount? Have we done that often enough to know that's the right amount? Like, it's hard to know, given your allocations here, whether, and I don't mean to pick on that specifically, but that to me, it's a big number. That's the biggest of the categories on your table in the report. How do we measure the efficacy of that, for example?
Thank you. So that goes through the same reporting requirements because we're required to report back to the province on the success or the impact to tourism following the year. So we rely on the reports back from the Grooming Collaborative, for example, to inform that reporting back to the province. To answer the question of, is that enough? Is that too much? The Grooming Collaborative specifically was implemented during COVID when events couldn't happen. At that time, I remember the CAO making it clear that it wouldn't always be that amount because it was typically being used for events. Over COVID, we couldn't do events, so it made sense to put that money towards the collaborative. Collaborative is a group of people, it's been created. Maybe there's an expectation of the money year over year, but it's not set in stone. These are things that would be discussed with the committee on whether that amount of money is too much, not enough. It's $65,000. The city, for the first time this year, will be using 15 of it to pay for our grooming on dike trails, which we've never done before. And there's mixed feelings about that, to be perfectly honest and transparent. I would say members of that committee maybe don't think that the city should be using that on our trails because maybe the impact of visitation is less than, say, the Nordic Society up at the park. So, I mean, I can go in more detail on what the collaborative actually is doing and their goals for the use of the RMI. It's very laid out. It's in a very comprehensive document that gets reviewed by myself and finance. So and we track that. And
yeah, and I know you're not asking us, Mr. Logan, to dive into that detail, but you can see what I mean in terms of what's driving our decision making when we don't have a handle on the value overall. Councillor Hamilton?
Thank you. That's exactly what I've been struggling with this entire discussion is I feel like we're being asked to provide input on creating a list, but we don't really know what exactly the scoring matrix to be used is going to be. It's kind of outlined in the report, but again, we don't know what the results of these events that are on our core list have been. How successful have they been? I am perfectly in favor of moving this forward and tasking staff with continuing these discussions, but I certainly don't feel comfortable right now making any decisions on which event or how to allocate funding or anything like that because I don't have enough information to make an intelligent and defensible decision.
I feel the same. Councillor McIsaac, and then Councillor Artie Kelly, Councillor
Ramirez. Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I'm not convinced that that's what we're actually being asked. No. I think what we're actually being asked is there's only 20 grand left, and do we want to kick in some taxes and up that number so that more people can apply? This is pretty late in the budget game, unfortunately, to be asking that question. And I, for one, while I am, as I think everyone's aware, a big fan of events in this community, I think right now we're already contributing a lot to the infrastructure that supports events. So at this time, I'm not sure if I'm comfortable expanding that remaining number. I'm comfortable with the list that's presented. Clearly, the people on the committee have spent a bunch of time and energy to winnow it down to something they thought had the greatest impact with the numbers and so on. Without us spending a bunch of hours at the table with them, I'm not sure that we can realistically modify that list very much. But if the ask is specifically about making changes to the budget right now to add to that, to contribute to further events, I'm not sure that I'm prepared to support that.
I would tend to agree. Councillor Audie Kelly.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Referring to the financial budgetary considerations table that is in the report, we have actually committed the funding to Grizz Days, right? The others are proposed tentative according to this list. And I just have to echo the feelings of councillors Hamilton and McIsaac and Your Worship that, to be honest with you, and apologies, but reading the report, I was unclear of the ask. I almost actually reached out to Your Worship to say, am I misunderstanding? Because I was really unclear on the ask, and I don't feel informed to just endorse per se.
Councillor Ramirez.
Sorry, Your Worship, I got to repeat what everybody said with Councillor Hamilton on, not understanding the real drivers here. Agree with Councillor McIsaac that it's the ask around $20,000. And I think it's too late in the game. It should have come before the budget season for me to endorse this. Only I've got two asks here, Your Worship, just following up on the comments that came during the public session. We are going to include senior center into that list, right, Director?
Council would like me to, I can.
Okay. And finally, one last thing, Your Worship, and I also understand Councillor's point on, having an elected official on that committee itself. While I agree with the sentiment behind it, we are also like liaison officers with all these different organizations too. So there is multiple ways for us to influence some of the thinking that is going on with some of these organizations. So I don't know if there is real benefit in double dipping into this effort.
Mr. Burdiss.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. A couple of things, just in an attempt to add a little more clarity. Staff is not asking council to change this year's budget. As Mr. Logan said, we just got these dates, a few weeks ago. And so obviously that's way too late for this year's budget process. It will factor into next year's budget process. It'll form part of our guidelines and discussions around that. I think what staff was maybe trying to trigger in council was just more of a philosophical discussion on this bucket in general. Mr. Logan, the table in the report has kind of been our last couple of years for our RDS for this bucket. But as Mr. Logan said, that's changed largely because of COVID. For one, the grooming collaborative started because of COVID, but also if I take Grizz Days, for example, 6 years ago, they received 35,000, 25 of which was from RMI, 10 was from taxation, and then COVID changed that. We changed the funding source to RMI to give our citizens a little bit of a break. So, if we keep going the way we have been, that leaves that $20,000 bucket, which is, it's not, I'm going to try not to get too rambly here. That's not, and we're not asking council to endorse a 20,000 number or a 30,000 number or a 40,000 number. We're more just raising the point that some of these events have had to keep going, with reduced funding levels and our RMI bucket's getting smaller and smaller because of that. And so philosophically speaking, we didn't want to go to the committee with this $20,000 number without council kind of endorsing, having a discussion tonight about that number maybe changing, only to come back to council with a draft RDS and have council say, oh, that's not, we weren't tied to this $20,000 number. So we're not looking for a specific number. We're just looking for a discussion on it as a whole. I think that helps with providing.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Well, two observations. One is likely this should have come to committee of the whole so we could have really unpacked it that way. And two, I appreciate the clarity. I think the committee should stay on this process. We don't have a lot of time to get this done. And yeah, just let's not have huge surprises in it when it comes back as a draft, such that, council is horrified by the outcome. I know I'm overstating the case, but you know what I mean. We're not close to it. We don't, as has already been pointed out, we don't know the depth of criteria, the reporting criteria, the way that these decisions are driven and made. So it's very difficult for us to comment beyond stay at it, be fully engaged with that committee, that stakeholder group to achieve the best agreed upon outcome. But I don't know how else to illustrate it. Councillor McIsaac and then Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Worship. Well, if you wanted a philosophical discussion, in all seriousness, I appreciate the ask for the philosophical side of this. I do think that there's a lot of good value in the RMI funding support for festivals and events. Since I got on council many, many years ago, the expansion of festival events in the communities has been recognized as one of the best ways to bring new tourists and get tourists to stay here and so on. So I think that this is good use of the money. I do think that there should be greater emphasis, if there is not already emphasis, on using the money wisely to support events that can eventually become self-sustainable and don't need to keep coming back to the well. Looking forward on where we are with infrastructure costs and so on, it's difficult to imagine, I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's difficult to imagine today council considerably expanding the amount of taxation money that's going into festivals and events. So to that end, I think it also behooves us to say we need to stop tapping into RMI then for our initiatives. It needs to stay in festival events, and we need to use taxes for our things. And not that we're completely separate, it's pretty integrated, but like from a philosophical perspective, that's what I'm taking away from this is I'd like to see more emphasis on sustainability. I would like the RMI money to be continued focusing on festivals and events, especially considering things like shoulder season and so on. I don't know if that really ties into the senior center. I don't know if it's a big tourist draw or not, but that's for other people to determine. And I also think we should avoid shifting money from this to initiatives that should otherwise be done through taxation. That's sort of my philosophical response to that.
Mr. Logan?
Thank you. That's exactly the type of discussion we're hoping to record and take to this committee. So to further the discussion, your worship mentioned we don't want to see surprises. What would be considered a surprise?
Well, that's a very good question. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Something that's, and I know you're going to work within the parameters of the RMI. I mean, that's clear. It's been clear from the start of the report and et cetera. But from my perspective, it would be that you came back with something that wasn't endorsed by your committee, that we need to work with the folks to, again, reflecting on Councillor McIsaac's comment, this is where the money really should be going. Work with them to develop, their contribution to our community. Mr. Logan.
So perfect. Within the report, I mentioned a few times that the strategy would be to pick projects that wouldn't be new infrastructure. It would be replacing old infrastructure that's required for tourism or enhancing the stuff that we have that's in line with the tourism master plan. So again, thank you for the discussion. Keep it going.
Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, so, and, I'm not tied to a council representative at all on this committee, although I did say it again. But And I don't want it to be me because I have lots of meetings, but the reason why I did that is the reason why I say that is because I don't want a lot of work to be put into this and then for it to come back here and we go, no, we're not going to do it that way, right? Whereas there could be a soft integration between the two, right? And that's the reason why I did that. But, you know, like this budget that we see in here, $450,000, it's $450,000 for events and animation. That should be it. Like, I mean, I don't see any taxpayer money going into any of this. Like, I honestly, I think that's the cap, right? If we get more money from the province, then we can expand it. But honestly, I just don't want to see any more money. So.
Fair. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. That's kind of a perfect segue into what I wanted to point philosophically. How I look at this is, you know, the RMI is meant for tourism-based things. Bring heads in beds, I think was an expression I heard earlier. Are these events that we've got listed here as our core events for tourists, or are they for residents? If we're talking about events that are for residents, then I would disagree with Councillor Nixon. I think we can put some taxation money into them through our operations. But if it's focused on attracting tourists, then our local resident tax dollars shouldn't be going to it. And RMI and whatnot, the resort development strategy, that's what this money is for, is attracting more people. In addition, I would like to see, or I would approach this with, let's do fewer events that have bigger impact and impact that is going to become sustainable. You know, if for the number $20,000, you know, if we could give $20,000 as a seed fund to one event 2 years in a row, but then that event just starts bringing in 100 people every October, every November, that's a good investment from a tourism perspective. Is giving $2,000 to 10 groups every year going to actually move the needle on things? I don't think so. So philosophically, that's how I would approach this.
Yeah, and I suspect, Mr. Logan, you have some of that data. Certainly, some of our community groups could provide that data. And just anecdotally, you know, when I spoke at Grizz Days and welcomed the visitors, it felt like a third of the crowd was visitors and everyone else were locals. So there is, I think you make a very good point. There is value to our residents as well. And many of these events, the socials, the Wednesday socials, I don't know the breakdown, but lots of, having worked the gate, lots of visitors, lots of locals. So it's, there is a conversation to be had there in terms of sustaining these events as for our residents as well. Yeah.
And I think just as a follow-up to that, you know, it would be great if we actually could see the report on these events and see what the impact has been and see a balance, see what the split is between residents versus visitors.
Councillor Artie Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. I actually am going to push back a little and a couple things that Councillor McIsaac said and a couple things that Councillor Nixon said, and also Councillor Hamilton. Heads in beds also are lots of toilets flushing. There is quite an impact to our community by tourism. Do I appreciate tourism? 100% I do. But quality of life for locals is also really important. And tourism does cost our community money as well as it brings money into the community, but it does have a deficit effect on infrastructure in some ways. And I really think that's important for us to recognize. And yes, like if there's a third of the people at Grizz Days are visitors, that's super. And I think it's wonderful that 2/3 of them are locals, because locals should get to enjoy their town. They're the people paying all the bills. So they should get to enjoy their community. The Wednesday socials are fantastic. They're packed. I have no idea how many of those folks are tourists. So you know what would be actually very nice, and you guys know me, I'm kind of that person that reads all the reports. I would like to see the metrics. I'd like to see them all, actually.
Councillor Ramirez, and then.
Sorry, Worship, can I muddy the water a little bit here? I personally think the grooming program at the dike is well received by a lot of our residents. Where if you try to differentiate that between tourism versus residents, I would say that would skew towards the residents.
Agreed.
I personally wouldn't want that to be taken out of the list. That would be a surprise to me if this committee comes back and says no more grooming at the dikes.
No, fair enough. And I don't think anybody's suggesting that. I think what we're hearing is a lack of metrics in terms of how these decisions are made. And Councillor Hamilton. Oh, sorry, Mr. Logan, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I could definitely provide the reporting, and there is extensive metrics to what's decided. So the point made by Councillor Ramadas, keep in mind that the intention of RMI money is specifically for the visitor experience and tourism. So the argument that the dike is for citizens is the argument of tourism, that taxation should pay for the dike maintenance and not RMI, therefore freeing up more money for events and animation. The table of events is up there for your consideration to have the discussion you're having. Thank you. It's to show that there is no money other than the $15,000, the $6,500 to Truth and Reconciliation, and the remainder to Canada Day. That's the only taxation that's included other than the in-kind, which is significant in some cases. That's the only money through taxation that's put towards events. And to someone else's point, Grizz Days, a third the visitors, it is for citizens as well. So that's the discussion we're hoping to have here today is, should RMI be paying for all these events, or is there a role of taxation in some of these community events as well?
Councillor Hamilton, did you have another comment?
I did, but I feel it's no longer necessary.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Logan, did you want to go back to your presentation? Yeah.
Quickly go off this slide. So next steps. The next steps include forming an RDS committee, which is attached to the project charter, finalizing the draft strategy, which the committee will do, seek public feedback and submit the draft to the province before April 30th. Council will be given the opportunity to endorse the draft before the RDS provincial approval. So the recommended action is for council to approve the RDS project. If additional information is needed, staff can provide these further details. However, we strongly recommend against it because the timeline is extremely tight. And finally, there's the recommendation.
Thank you. Other questions from council? I did want to ask, because it was asked this evening from one of our presenters in the public participation period about a commitment to the in-kind for the Wednesday socials. I'm at a loss how to advance that because I don't know the cost, what that would look like.
Sure. A couple of years ago, my team started to develop information on staff time spent for events. In the report, it said just under $3,000, which is fairly accurate. That's going off two annual invoices to the Fernie District's Arts Council for Wednesday nights. So I think one invoice was 35 and the other was 27. So that would include primarily the barricades, which I think is like 2,300 of that for the 13 or so events. Staff time is not included in that amount, neither is road closures. The event is actually, or the event supplies for Station Square is actually set up in such a way where it doesn't actually take a lot of staff time because it's in the storage facility that we built specifically for Station Square events, where the art station has access to the building and they essentially set up themselves. So just under $3,000.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Burdett. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor Milligan. To Ms. Ferguson's point earlier, I think, and for my part, we shifted the library and community partner presentations to the fall so that council would be able to see their budgets in advance of our budget, which was new this year. We used to do it this time of year, and then it was far too late. So we made that change. And specifically, there was an ask for the 15,000 and in-kind support for Wednesday night socials, which council direction at that point was for staff to do a report on the funding source for that, which is included as part of this report as being RMI. And so two things, I guess, Ms. Ferguson now is starting to plan Wednesday night socials and wanted to just, I mean, we're not asking for direction to fund them. We're asking as part of this report that council is not against Wednesday night socials as we go plan this RDS, which I'm not hearing that council is against. And also, I think next year I need to work on the process with our community partners in terms of circulating this back through council and staff and actually getting them an answer before now, because, well, I think I speak for them when I say they're not expecting a yes every time, but they do appreciate answers. So I think that was the point of Ms. Ferguson's comments earlier. And so I'm not sure we're looking for official direction other than there's no opposition at this point to continue.
Right.
to move
So
forward with
if
that.
we were to endorse continuing the development of the RDS strategy and all the conversation tonight, that's probably sufficient direction to work with Ms. Ferguson and support that event.
Yeah, and I met with Ms. Ferguson a couple of weeks ago and explained to her what would be the likely outcome of tonight, and that it would likely form part of the RDS at the end of April, which would then likely be approved for June, which would have to be enough for her for this year for her planning.
Okay, thank you. With that, I will ask our corporate officer to read the recommendation, please and thank you. No, I don't think so.
Oh, moment. Okay. Your Worship and Council, the staff recommendation is that Council endorse the Resort Development Strategy Project and direct staff to advance development to present an initial draft to the Ministry of Tourism, Arts, Culture and Sport by April 30, 2025.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Ramadas. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Logan.
Thank you.
Item 14.1, a request for in-kind 2025 Chautauqua celebration under correspondence, and any discussion on that? We have been provided with a optional recommendation. I'll ask our corporate office to read. Perhaps we can have a discussion during that.
The recommendation is that Council approve the in-kind support request from the Fernie and District Historical Society for the annual Chautauqua celebration, and that the corporate officer be authorized to execute the confirmation of support authorization on behalf of the City of Fernie.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor McIsaac. Any discussion? Councillor Ramadas.
Thanks, Your Worship. Can staff remind me, like when we are endorsing the community important events, wouldn't this be part of that package? Why is this coming as a separate ask?
I would look to corporate officer on this question.
One moment.
The community significant events, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, microphone.
Thank you, Your Worship. Almost certainly they need this supporting document for a grant application.
Yes, Council needs to endorse their.
Yeah, and I think the letter actually
The letter does say that.
does say
Yeah,
that.
I just can't.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. And then there is the late item, asking council to fly the School District 93, the Conseil Scolaire Francophone, to fly the Francophone flag for the remainder. I know, it's late. For the remainder of the month, contrary to policy. And it's, the whole request got cut up in our end, so I would hope that we can endorse this. Moved by Councillor McIsaac, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Councillor Adi Kelly?
Since there's very little time remaining in the month, could we maybe give them an extra week or something like that? I know since it's contrary to policy anyway, like, I mean, what's left in the month? There's like 5 days,
I
like,
don't have any issue
could
with
we
that,
give them
yeah.
2 weeks at least?
Yeah. No, no. Councillor Ravenous?
Something that I was talking to Councillor McIsaac during the break here, Your Worship. It's kind of like if there is a gazetted, Canadian Gazette actually has a list of symbols that are like provincially recognized symbols. And if there is an ask of them being flown at the city facilities, who are we to weigh in on that as a council? Right? What I'm thinking is, if there is an ask, could staff not just go ahead and fly it? Like, why do we need the middleman here?
Yeah, I was curious about that myself, although we did endorse the flag policy, and the flag policy requires that all these requests come back to council, so, and require a resolution. Yeah, what were we thinking? Councillor Adi Kelly? Sorry.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Harsh.
Yeah, finish your thought.
Yeah, my thought is, for whatever reason, if there are 4 of us who just oppose for whatever reason, right? And this happens to be a provincial symbol, like, I don't know what sort of legal troubles we'll be in.
Right,
So
yeah.
I don't know. We just have to streamline this, I feel, the flag policy itself.
Yeah, that's a fair comment. Councillor Adi Kelly?
Actually, that's kind of where I was going from. Something you said sparked that for me, Harsh. So if we know that March is always the month for the Francophone flag to be flown, could we do something like a standing order? Like, we've got their letter, could we say, okay, every March for X time, we're going to fly their flag?
Yeah, maybe. Councillor McIsaac?
Thank you, Worship. I like where the direction of the conversation is going, but how would we parse additional requests then? So if another organization comes along and wants to fly in March and we have given up all of March to Francophone, then what's our choices? So I guess I'm just saying, I'm not sure if I want to presuppose, because very quickly, I think we could end up with a variety of organizations taking up long blocks of time. And then now we're definitely going to be opposing Councillor Ramadas here, because now staff is now having to pick and choose from various organizations and which one can fly this weekend, and that's going to get really sticky very quickly. So I'm not sure if I'm in favor of presupposing who should get to fly. What I would like, though, is those organizations that are hoping for it to ask well in advance and give us a long calendar advance so that we have the opportunity to prepare, and also to say there is a conflict, somebody else has already booked that time, et cetera, et cetera.
No, fair enough. Councillor Adi Kelly, did you have a further comment?
Yeah, good points, Councillor McIsaac. And maybe bearing in mind provincially recognized and nationally recognized situations.
Yeah. Thank you. Good discussion. I know. Yeah. So would you read the recommendation with that, or do we need an amendment? Okay. Yeah, we've already moved so moved by Councillor Adi Kelly, seconded by Councillor Hamilton, that no, this is the amendment. That we fly for an additional week. All those in favor? And the original motion I don't think you need to read it again. As amended, all those in favor? Both are unanimous. Thank you. Thank you. Reports from council members. I'll start with Councillor McIsaac and work our way around the horseshoe.
I'm completely unprepared. Can't think of anything I've done. Is that terrible?
Yeah.
Normally there's some breaks in the meeting, but we spent all that time talking. One thing I will say is I'm quite looking forward to an upcoming meeting next week in Victoria. As part of my work with UBCM, I'll be meeting with a whole host of ministers to discuss a wide variety of topics around housing and infrastructure and so on. No promises that it'll have any benefit to us, but that is the goal of all the time. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Amadas.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just wanted to kudo athletes from the Fernie Nordic Society for
well done,
having
yeah.
competed well at the nationals. I believe Miss Ella, I forget Fuller, yes, sorry, Miss Ella Fuller winning the competition, great achievement. I've seen these kids compete. They are just phenomenal athletes. So I wasn't surprised, but just to see their name show up on this podium list was pretty impressive. That is that, and I did attend the chamber meeting last month as a liaison officer. I had a whole bunch of notes. I have forgotten where I have. But fortunately, I believe there is another meeting happening at the month end, so I will provide more updates at my next council reports.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. Had to go back a few pages to remind myself as well what's been up to since the last council report. And first one was an interesting seminar put on by Don Lidstone of Lidstone Group, who does a lot of municipal and provincial law. And there's a lot of work being done at the moment to modernize the Local Government Act. And so definitely recommend to all my colleagues sitting around the horseshoe to go and review that work. They're actually seeking municipal councillors and regional district elected officials' input. Had some great conversations at the last couple council cafes. Remind everybody that first and third Mondays from 12 till 1:30ish. Councillors are here having lunch and invite you to come and just chat about anything that's on your mind city related. Also had a few meetings with AKBLG in preparation for our annual conference coming up in April. A number of resolutions that I think are of value to all residents of BC and communities around the Kootenay boundary local area. And I think that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nixon.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. I was going to say that I had nothing to report because I've been on vacation, but we were in Kicking Horse Mountain, and a week prior to us arriving there, the gondola fell apart. And it was metal fatigue, which is quite something. It's quite shocking to see that. And it just emphasizes that the risk from aging infrastructure, what we saw here tonight, 10th Avenue, we saw the CNL right away. This aging infrastructure thing it's overlapping into everything, right? Mm-hmm. So it's, went to, Golden itself is going to really reel from this. They have about $400 million worth of houses up on the ski hill that are now empty for the next, who knows how long it's going to take for them to fix this, right? So, thinking about our community center, thinking about our arena disaster, thinking about all these things. And it's like, we really have to stay on top of it and fund these things as well. We headed to Revelstoke for a couple of days after that. And that community it's on fast forward right now. The amount of building of multiple units, the base camp, that's the 3 base camps that they have there, We talked to our waitress at the hotel or at one of the restaurants, and she said, my boyfriend was just in Fernie. That's just how Revelstoke was 10 years ago. And so we really have to be careful of the growth that we're bringing about here. So that's about it. So from nothing to something, there it is.
Thank you, Councillor Nixon. Councillor Audie Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just and mentioning another Fernie youth who's doing some pretty amazing stuff on the world stage, Sam Goodison. Just amazing. And thank you, Steve Kite, for keeping me up to date on those things with your posts. I also wanted to mention that Elk Valley Raiders U13 hockey team competed at the Pee Wee Provincials in Dawson Creek. And congratulations to the Ghost Riders who are going to be Tier 1 Junior A next year. Pretty exciting stuff. I haven't been to a tourism meeting lately, but I wanted to say that their annual general meeting is April 3rd. And to congratulate them, they won a Tourism Excellence Award. I mentioned that they were nominated for 2 awards, one being that and the other being Yika Georgi, the director, was also nominated, and they did win the Tourism Excellence Award. So I think that's pretty awesome stuff. And I also want to say to something that an earlier speaker talked about. I wanted to defend staff a little bit because generally speaking, when snow events happen, ideally all your equipment's working, all your staff are available, and things are awesome. There are rare occasions when they were not. The last snowfall wasn't an ideal situation for us, so apologies to the community for any inconvenience that caused, but there was no malevolent plan to not take proper care of the streets. So I would like to say, sorry, it was an unfortunate situation, but it was not deliberate or intended. It was unfortunate circumstances that caused that. And thanks, Your Worship.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Because we've had such full agendas, I have to go back a long way for some of these things. But I did want, largely because he's in the crowd this evening, to give a shout out to the Fernie Heritage Society and the Fernie Museum for their Spaghetti Western Murder Mystery at the Elks Hall, which if you haven't attended one of these events, they're an absolute riot. They do such a great job. They have a room full of actors playing parts, and they throw their hearts into it. I can't recommend it highly enough. It was great fun. I also got to participate in the Fernie Skiing Heritage Class of 2025 induction. That's put on by local Fernie businessman Mike Delich, and a great cross-section of the community that all got together around skiing, and it was it's a really interesting event, and sort of highlights how the sports evolved in our community from a community hill family-run operation to where we are today, and as has been pointed out, producing some amazing athletes on this mountain. I also get to spend the time in the company of a bunch of local school classes who named our snowplows, and that's always a great event. The kids have such a riot, and I got to hand it to the staff at the ops center too, because they're just so responsive to those kids, and they do such a great job. Again, thanks to everyone who comes out to the council cafe, and not to be too repetitive, but Councillor Audie Kelly raised the Tourism Fernie AGM next week, which I'm also very much looking forward to. So thank you, everybody, and thank you all those at home. And with that, we will adjourn our meeting at 9:03 p.m.